Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to November 7th, 2018 meeting of the Danville-Boyle County Planning and Zoning Commission. Thank you for your presence. Appreciate you being in attendance and showing an interest in planning and zoning. We begin our meeting in prayer. Our God and Father in heaven, we thank you for this day and all the blessings of it, the health you've given us, and allow us to arise and live another day. We thank thee for this community we live in, this country we live in, the safety and protection you've given us, the freedoms that we enjoy, all the blessings of this country that we have. We pray for those this day that have suffered tragedies, particularly the families of those school children that were killed in a traffic accident, and others that have lost loved ones in shootings, and those that have been injured. I pray that you would bless and comfort and heal them all. Pray for our soldiers who continue to defend the freedoms that we enjoy, that those conflicts be resolved and they would return home to their loved ones as soon as possible. Pray today as we make decisions that affect this community, it will be the better interest of this community for all those that are involved. Continue to watch over and care for us, guide, guard, direct us. In Christ's name we pray, amen. Item C on the agenda is the approval of minutes of October 3rd, 2018.
Make a motion to approve.
David moves we approve.
I'll second.
Susie seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous. Thank you. Item D, financial report. Stephen, you want to share that?
Yeah, just real quick. This is the first report that you guys are looking at that after we've now got a contract bookkeeping firm. I want to make sure it meets all your expectations, and it may be something the budget committee wants to look at maybe later, make sure again, reflects what you guys will see on a monthly basis. It was their first report. It looks similar to me as the prior ones. Finance report, 2 pages, and you got the balance sheet document. We did have a list of bills, I think, prior, and we'll talk to them about that. But other than that, it looks good to me. I also want to point out again, you guys are looking at September's finance report, even though it's November. And I want to talk about that later in the meeting under new business about maybe how we can get you guys more current information. And point out on page 1 of that finance report, you look at our zoning permits. We had a pretty good month in September. That's about midway down on that left-hand column, almost $5,000. And you can see we're trending at about 47% on our zoning permits after the first quarter. But you can see our overall revenues are right around 28%. Other than that, on the balance sheet, again, I want to talk about this later, but if you turn to the balance sheet, you look at our Farmers Bank balance. That's the September 30th. We had an interesting kind of October. Our appropriations came in. Our actual balance as of October 31st is 106 plus. So again, you guys are looking at fairly dated material, just the way the timing of our bank statements and the meeting date. But our current bank balance as of today is over $106,000. That's because of deposits we got in October that you guys typically won't see till December. And we'll talk about that maybe later on how we can make these things tighten up that window so you guys can be looking at more current finance information. Other than that, I have nothing else unless you guys have a question on the finance report.
Questions?
Do you need a motion?
Please.
Make a motion to approve.
Susie moves we approve.
I'll second.
Harry seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous. Item E, construction sureties.
That's just for your information item in the packet that we do every month. There's no action item we need. It's just there unless you guys have any questions on the standing sureties that we're holding. That does show you our current balance. Again, matches with the finance statement.
Questions? Hearing none, item F, subdivision approvals. Joe Frankel Estate applied for a subdivision of on tracts land containing 7.921 acres at 0 Bluegrass Pike.
Yeah, thank you. We've got 5 plats that were reviewed by the Technical Review Committee on October 24th. All were given preliminary approval. And there were 11 by 17 copies in your packets. If you need bigger copies, Elisa has some up at the desk, sir, we can get. I'll go through each plat one by one if that's what you all want, and the surveyors are here and they can get up and give you a quick summary of their items. or you guys can approve all 5 again, one by one. Okay, well, the first one, we'll let Mr. Carroll, we'll kind of let the surveyors maybe just tell you what's on their plats. Frankel's the first one.
Oh, okay. Good morning. The Frankel Estate, I actually did.
Excuse me, introduce yourself,
I'm
please.
sorry, Steve Carroll,
Thank you, and you're representing, or what company?
Carroll Land Surveying.
Thank you.
Mr. Joe Frankel had an existing tract, just over 8 acres, wanted to subdivide it and add the 5.093 parcel out front and consolidate it and create a new tract with greater road frontage. The front area there is a little wet with that drain, the existing drain, so there was no reason to try to create a different building lot there because it would have been unbuildable as it sits. But there are no new infrastructure, basically taking just a portion of an estate farm and adding it to the existing 8-acre tract that was subdivided.
Questions?
Make a motion we approve.
Terry moves we approve.
Second.
Jim seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Item 2, James Lawson and Robert Stoudemayer. Applied for approval subdivision tract 7.148 acres, 0 Winterhawk Lane.
I'm Dale Shepperson,
Morning, Dale.
AGE. This particular piece of property on Winterhawk, there was a plat that had just came before you a couple months ago, where Mr. Lawson divided the property into a couple tracts. And the back tract, we're now subdividing it again. It's labeled on your plat as tract 2-C2, and that tract will have a 25-foot strip that Mr. Lawson is also conveying with that goes all the way to Winterhawk. And the purchaser, Mr. Stoudemayer, already has a 25-foot strip that goes down to Winterhawk, and those two 25 strips will make 150, so this tract will be able to stand alone. And after you combine it all together, it'll be tract 4 with basically 3 acres, 2.99 acres.
Questions?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Susie moves we approve.
I'll second.
Terry seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous. Number 3, Stephen and Martha Taylor. Applied for approval subdivision tract of 120.723 acres on Elk Cave Road.
This tract is a little bit different. It's the original tract of Steve and Scott Taylor's was a little over 100 acres. And it lays in Boyle County, although it had no road frontage, period, either in Boyle or Casey County. Their dad owns a piece of property that is out front of their property in Casey County. The line basically goes through where the two property lines divide. So they are each getting a tract from their dad, and then they're separating the large tract that they own together. They're dividing it amongst themselves. So each tract will have road frontage, although it won't be in Boyle County. So we went ahead and brought the plat here. We'll also record it in Casey so that it's recorded in both counties. So try to cut down on some confusion if we can.
So basically just dividing the family farm?
Mm-hmm.
Dale, what's the, for my information, the black, what is that? That's their access.
Oh, yes.
Is that the
Yes,
access?
the tract to the east there's a knob that runs sort of parallel with that track, so you can't access that without using the road that is there now, which the road is across Clifford and what will be Steve. So Scott needs that easement to get across those two tracks.
Okay, and that is the road itself.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
I move we approve.
I'm sorry.
I move
Terry
we
approves. Motion to approve, Jim second. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor, vote unanimous. Item 4, George and Patricia Douglas and Jeff and Trena Berger. Plat approval of subdivision tract on 2.498 acres at 3926 and Highway 3765 and Highway 1856, which is Scrubgrass Road out of Parksville.
There's basically two things going on with this plat. Jeff and Trena Berger had purchased about 1.5 acres from George Douglas about, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8, 9 years ago. And they have a deed to that property. However, when you pull that deed, it does not refer, it refers to a plat, but that's blank. And that plat never did get recorded. So there was no way to know what the meets and bounds of the property were. So what we're doing is describing that meets and bounds in one tract, which is the 1.5 acre tract, and then we're creating another acre from George Douglas to be conveyed to Jeff and Trena Berger.
Question, discussion?
Motion to approve.
David moves we approve.
I'll second.
Susie seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor? It's unanimous.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Dale. And item 5, Bradley Whitehouse, approval for subdivision on tracts containing 11.495 at 1925 Gose Pike.
Good morning, folks.
Morning, Nancy.
My name is Nancy Estes with Estes Engineering and Surveying. Mr. Whitehouse contacted us to divide his property into 2 tracts. In doing the research on that, we found that the previous plat that was done back in the late 70s was incorrect. So what we're doing is correcting the original plat and deed, and also dividing the property into 2 tracts. I'm sorry. It's about a mile down, it's across from Al Harrison's home and Bob Miller. It's about a mile down Gose Pike from the bypass going south.
I move we approve.
Jim moves we approve.
I'll second.
Susie seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor? It's unanimous.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you, Nancy. Item G, public hearing, Michael McAfee's plat for application to rezone property on Stanford Road of 45.844 acres.
Alrighty, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a zone change request that we're gonna walk through. We've got a few slides to show you. You also have a revised concept plan at your seat. The one that went out in the packet's actually been revised twice since 1 week. That's the one that's got the green on it there. You guys all got that in front of you? Jerry, it's I think the newest one is to your right there, that one. That's the newest one. And
Thank you.
again, Jim, yours there's there in front of you too. So again, we sent one out a week ago with your staff reports. And again, there's been a lot of kind of moving pieces to this case. We'll walk you through some of that and explain what's going on here. The property's up here on the screen, and we'll show you several different slides as we go through, but in general, get my pointer out here. In general, we're talking about this piece over here, and we'll talk about that in just a second. It's got several zonings on it. But I'm gonna work off the staff report, and then you guys can look at the exhibits. But page 1 of the staff report mentions that this application was filed on October 17th, 2018. The applicant is Michael McAfee. The location of property is actually 0 Stanford Road. And again, if you look at the map, we pretty much know that is right across from Pioneer Playhouse in that general area. And you guys probably saw the zoning signs on Stanford Road, but that has a 0 address. The property size is 55.62 acres. However, we're only zoning a portion of that, which is 45.844 acres. The frontage, as you can see on that property, is already zoned highway commercial, that you can see here. And on his property kind of goes around these apartments that are down here. So he has highway commercial, agriculture, industrial, and floodplain, and highway commercial here. So we're actually just zoning what's behind the existing highway commercial. So everything that you see from this line is about 45, almost 46 acres. The proposed zoning is to go from AR1, which is agriculture, and IBD, which is industrial, to the district NCR-C, NCR-C, which is our kind of mixed-use commercial district. And we'll talk about the concept plan in here in just a second. But what the applicant's intended to do is do a mix of uses on this property, which are basically commercial, transitioning into office, into some apartments, and we'll walk you through all that. The zoning history is interesting, though. You can see the zoning history on page 1 that AR1, or agriculture, is the original zoning. And the property has currently several zoning districts on it, one being industrial zoning, which kind of, I guess, goes back in the day when we had some different developments in this area, but all of this red is zoned IBD, or an industrial business district, that sits on this property, and then you can see splits to the agriculture and highway commercial. The future land use designation is mixed use residential. And as you know, this future land use map was amended prior this year. The mixed, and I'll show this in a second too, the future land use category for this property was all pretty much multifamily. And the applicant came forward and applied for a future land use map amendment earlier this year to make it mixed use residential, which was kind of a precursor to the zone change, obviously, under our requirements. The comprehensive plan requirement starts on page, or the concept plan requirement starts on page 2. And I'm gonna get to the right map on that. This is the concept plan you have at your seat and was revised. And I'm gonna read some of this over here because these are actually development conditions. And this is a little different looking concept plan than maybe the Planning Commission has seen in the past. But this is what the applicant has put forward, and we've worked together, the staff, the applicant, and his engineer, to get a concept plan, I think, that meets a few initiatives here, which is to make it somewhat flexible and conceptual as the product develops, but to get some hard commitments on the property that'll stay with the property and over time end up with a development that might shift or move a little bit, but there's certain components of that will not. Which we'll talk about in a second. This is actually their master plan, which is, I'll call draft 2 or 3. So this is actually the master plan of what we're intending to do on the property. But, you know, at this point in time, these building rooftops could shift or change. And as you know, we'll get site plans some point down the road. And we'll be able to look at all these products as they're done piecemeal, as they're developed. I think historically, this Planning Commission has seen concept plans of this nature, which to me look like site plans when you get all the way down to parking spaces and building rooftops and drainage basins. Those are site plans. To me, and I mentioned this to the applicant, this is a concept plan to me. It's more conceptual in nature. It sets some general parameters with some hard defined conditions that will be recorded with the property. So basically, I'll read these to you and explain what the applicant is committing to. But in general, to start with, let's talk about their frontage. They're proposing a road through the property, as you can see on the master plan. The idea is to build a street through this property that would be across from Pioneer Playhouse a little bit, and would actually tie into J.E. Woods Drive if we can figure out how to work a partnership with the city on that. And there would be a new cross street that would go from 2nd all the way through the Stanford Avenue. So there would be a stub street kind of proposed here to kind of tie in with a road alignment to 2nd with an existing city street. And again, you can go back and look at the aerial, and look at the map, and you can see here's J.E. Woods, right in this area, and here's the property. So we're talking about there's just a short little piece that's not, there's no road bed, that we have a city street that just dead ends past the park that could easily tie into this property. And we've talked to City Public Works about that and how all that could work. And again, it'll be a little complicated because it's on down the road. So we get back to the concept plan, and what we're showing is a general road alignment with locked-in issue up here, which is that the state's going to have to tell us where that entrance is going to be. So what the applicant's saying is they're going to build a road, and that the state, and we're going to talk about that in this verbiage right here, that the state's going to actually tell us where this is going to be. If by chance it has to shift one way or the other, the whole road alignment will shift, but I think the general idea is there's going to be one road that runs through this with some cul-de-sacs, one access point, one main road access point here, and a connection back here. If by chance neither one of these can be achieved, we're working with KDOT on this end and City of Danville on this end. This could end up being a cul-de-sac someday. It may not get all the way down the hill, but again, that's why that's a master plan and that's a concept plan. The other thing that's being locked down in the concept plan is this will be commercial, and this green in here says commercial land use. This becomes the mixed land use, which could be either commercial or apartments. And then the red is actually a different designation based on building interior or exterior design, and it's a different kind of commitment, and I'll explain that in a second. But this is where the mixed use would be, and this is where Mr. McAfee would potentially relocate his landscape business down in this area. So going back to the master plan, I'll walk you through some of the components. Again, this is the commercial line and shows potentially different kind of rooftops. These are conceptual. These could change. Someone may want to buy one lot or all the lots, or this could end up being 4 lots or 5. But you can see commercial kind of transitioning to potentially office or commercial, potentially office, maybe assisted living, maybe daycare, and then clearly, conceptually, you can see these look like different kind of apartment types. Could be condos, could be apartments, could be townhomes, or a mix thereof. And then, of course, Mr. McAfee's business kind of lands back here in the back along the floodplain and kind of back in this general area. So this is the master plan, and again, it's very likely it won't develop like this. It'll be market driven. You know, it may take years to build all this out, but what we're looking at basically is a general concept of the road coming through from Stanford to J.E. Woods with a mix of commercial, office, and multifamily, and floodplain, and some other things. So again, the concept plan, I think, was done well. It shows the floodplain. It shows where the uses split, and now they'll be locked in. We won't be able to do apartments up here. If this is commercial, we can mix back here, and then we're going to talk about some building issues related to this. He's also committed to a landscape, a fairly good landscape buffer on this side, and I'll read those. Those are in the commitments, as well as a greenways or walking trail option here, as well as a trail throughout the entire development that ties in with the existing trail system we already have. So these are hard to read on the plan, and there's some extras back here if anyone wants them, but I'm going to read them one by one. They're in your staff report, fairly well written, that you can read them. But there's a number 7 that got added since the last meeting, or since the packets went out, and I want to explain what these building elevations are going to be. There's fairly detailed commitments here on what we're going to see as far as the type of buildings that potentially would be built in this development. So page 2 talks about the concept plan, and again says Article 1810 requires that the applicant has to submit a concept plan, and this would be the concept plan with the defined 7 conditions. The number 1 on this plan up here that the applicant's committing to says the applicant agrees that the total cumulative building area footprint should not exceed 600,000 square foot. No commercial buildings shall exceed 48 feet in height. No residential buildings shall exceed 35 feet. I'm going to go back to this master plan as I jump off of these. Again, what 600,000 sounds like a lot, but what that is that's a combination of these rooftops, these apartments. Some of these apartments can be taller than 1 story. So the 600 foot is a cap on the 600,000 square foot is a cap on the development. There's no way there's going to be 600,000 square foot of one or the other. But if by chance, let's say this all developed as commercial or all as multifamily, that cap would be in place, that's all the building rooftop we're going to allow on this project. You got to remember, this is a 55-acre tract, almost 56 acres. It's fairly big. And again, these aren't very big buildings, as you see, but if you add up all these buildings, all this square footage, the 600 seemed fair. It seems flexible for the developer. It's unlikely we're going to hit that number, but we left it loose because what if there were more apartments and the apartments ended up being 2-story or 3-story, for example. So again, the concept plan is somewhat loose. These development conditions are hard and firm, and that's number one, that there be no more than 600,000. No residential building shall exceed 35 feet, so that means we're going to not have more than 3-story apartments, and the commercial buildings are 48 feet, which pretty much is going to probably be a 1 or possibly 2-story building. Number 2 deals with signage. An applicant definitely dialed back the signage that he's allowed to do to try to make the development more attractive. Number 2 says applicant agrees to 1 freestanding sign for each lot. Commercial signs fronting Stanford Road should be limited to 1 freestanding sign not to exceed 20 feet in height and a maximum sign face of 100 square feet. Right now, if you're zoned highway commercial, which he already is, you can actually make those signs 30 foot tall. So he's committing that the signs would only be 20 foot tall. That would be the maximum sign height, and they'd be 100 square feet is what we typically allow in highway commercial. It says all other commercial lots shall be limited to 10 feet in height and the maximum of 80. So basically what we're saying is the lots at front Stanford are going to get the 20-foot high signs, and the second tier signs are going to be more monument style. They can't be taller than 10 feet in height. They'd be more monument or pylon, and they can only be 80 square feet in sign face. So again, they're limiting those by almost 20% that you typically could do anywhere else in town. So that's a fairly strict commitment on signage. Internal on the development and for along Stanford Road. There's obviously signs on Stanford Road today that are taller than 20 feet and bigger than 100, and the applicant's committing to those to be a higher quality and a little less intrusive on Stanford Road. Number 3, it says the applicant agrees to install a 25-foot wide landscape buffer on the eastern property line. That's this property line right here. 25 feet. Our zoning ordinance only requires 10. And it says the buffer shall consist of a minimum of 10 evergreen trees, 5 deciduous shade trees, and 20 shrubs per 100 linear feet. That's a fairly intense landscape buffer. And the applicant is in the landscape business. His intention is to have a nice heavy buffer on this eastern property line from these existing residential units. And the main reason being is, as you can see, that eastern edge there for him, or western edge for these guys, there's potentially going to be some commercial uses. And that's kind of the area we want to address for these folks that already live here in a residential setting. We want a heavy buffer here. As we get back in this area, this multifamily is going to be adjacent to the landscape business and the floodplain. But from this corner right here, the concept plan is committing to a 25-foot buffer with, as you can see in number 3, a fairly heavy landscape commitment. There's another sentence that says plant species and spacings will be established on the first lot to be developed along the landscape buffer. Subsequent developments along the landscape buffer shall include the like kind species and plant spacings. So what that's saying is, if by chance this lot sells first, they have to put in those trees, those plants, those shrubs, that combination. Whatever plant species are picked here, they'll have to continue for the other property owners as they're sold. That'll be the style of land, so we don't end up with different styles of trees and shrubs. It'll be a consistent landscape buffer all the way through. Commitment 4, and I apologize, these are fairly wordy, but again, we thought it was important to get these things fairly detailed. Commitment 4 is very, very impressive. And again, it's on the concept plan. It's right in here, and it would be committed to and locked in and recorded. This deals with buildings that are going to develop on the property and what we're going to see and the quality of those buildings. So in general, what I'll tell you is, in this section, there's not going to be any metal buildings, no vinyl buildings. The applicant's made a commitment on very high quality materials for all the buildings in all of this project, and the only area that the building quality or commitment drops off is this red area, and that's what's new on the plan. So this mixed use area, There's not the same commitment at the bottom of the hill because the landscape business is going to be back there, and there's going to be a need for some different style of buildings that wouldn't meet these commitments. So let me read what he's put together for the commitments on that. Number 4 says the exterior of all buildings, except those on lots immediately adjacent to Stanford Road, shall be constructed at least 50% brick, stone, masonry, or drive it. So basically, that's brick, stone, hardy board, drive it, no vinyl, no metal. That's all these buildings in this area. So in the whole development, those buildings have to be at least 50% brick, stone, masonry, or drive it. The exterior of all buildings on lots immediately adjacent to Stanford Road shall be at least 75%, and the ones that are adjacent to Stanford Road will be 100%. So if you look at that last sentence on number 4, it says, on lots immediately adjacent to Stanford Road, the building wall fronting Stanford Road will be constructed using 100% brick, stone, masonry, or drive it. So every facade that we see on Stanford Road will be 100% of those higher quality materials. The other sides can be 75%, and then these buildings can be 75% overall. What that does is ensure a higher quality development. We're not going to have metal buildings. We're not going to have pole barns. We're going to have brick buildings or hardy or drive it or combination stone, brick, or whatever. And again, you can see some of these rooftops and anticipate what these could be, either restaurants or retail, and to put that kind of commitment on things of that nature is pretty impressive, and shows that the developer wants to have a nice development as he builds this new street. Because I guess the potential then is this street could turn into, if you think about this as his frontage, and traditionally someone would develop this way and put commercial buildings. But as we build this street, there's the potential this becomes a secondary commercial corridor with the ability to have buildings fronting that corridor that could be a second tier of development. And the intention is to keep that a high quality style development in there. Number 5 is cookie cutter. It just says the applicant agrees the property shall be connected to the city of Danville sewer. So all of this will be on sewer. And I apologize about this, but I have to read number 6 because it's very complicated, but it deals with the access in the state of Kentucky and traffic studies. So number 6 is pretty wordy, and I'll walk you through some of that, and I promise this will wrap up pretty quick after that. Number 6 says all future street and driveway entrances connecting to Stanford Road must be approved by KYTC, or as what we know, Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. In conjunction with such applications to KYTC may require the applicant to provide a traffic impact study, intersection analysis, and highway improvements along Stanford Road. Supplemental to what may be required for traffic planning by KYTC, the applicant agrees that each site development plan submitted to planning and zoning for this project must include an engineer's report of trip generation until such time that a traffic study for the McAfee property development has been submitted to planning and zoning. Each engineer's report of trip generation must include an account of existing trips that have been added to Stanford Road by previous additions or developments within the McAfee property development, and project the trips added by any pending development. Trip generation reports would be based on traffic counts or statistical trip generations rates as described in the ITE trip generation manual, and reports should define the average daily trips added to Stanford Road by the McAfee property development. So before I finish that off, what we're basically saying is the applicant is agreeing that the KDOT's going to tell us something at some point, where the access goes, if we have to put in a turn lane, center turn lane, right turn lane, whatever. And a traffic study is going to come to us at the site plan level. And at each development, before we get that traffic study, we're going to get a trip generation report, which comes out of a manual. So if, for example, this was going to be a bank, let's say, there's an engineered manual called an ITE manual that says how many trips generally a bank would generate depending on how big it is or how many drive-through lanes or whatnot. We'll get a trip generation report, and then what the applicant's going to commit to in that last sentence is at some point we get over 1,000 trips generated, we're getting a traffic study. And that traffic's going to spell out exactly what we're going to do. This traffic study is going to be a fairly big deal because of this right here, this J.E. Woods connection. A traditional traffic study, if we got one today and this was a cul-de-sac, would study this entrance and maybe go down here. But because we're connecting this road through, this traffic study is going to be a fairly big regional traffic study and be fairly expensive. And the state may ask the applicant to do that tomorrow. There's a good chance. But what we're saying is the state's going to get their shot at asking the applicant to build what they need. And at some point, we're never going to build all this out without getting some traffic information submitted to this body. So that's what that commitment's saying right here, that we're going to get that traffic study at some point in the development. We're going to get trip generation information at every site plan that comes into us, so we can at least look at it at that point and see what's suggested. And then that last sentence says, or it's a couple sentences, at a time when average daily trips generated by the McAfee exceeds 1,000 average daily trips, the pending site development plan applicant may be required to submit a traffic study to assess the conditions impacts along Stanford Road. The scope of this impact study may be determined by the questions and concerns of the planning and zoning at the time that the 1,000 average daily trips have been added. So again, I think the plan is we're going to see a traffic study. We're not seeing it today, but we're going to see one in the future. And to be fair to the applicant, they were interested in trying to figure out what they're going to need to do too as they move forward with their master plan, but the state has yet to give them hard feedback, I think, on exactly what they want on Stanford Road. They may require them to do a decel lane into this site, like the apartments down here. They may have to figure out a way to put a turn lane in here, and as you know, there's some gas infrastructure right here. They may have to do a center turn lane along Stanford Road. KDOT may say, hey, we're good like you're showing us right here. It's unlikely. They may have to carve off some of this frontage for a road widening project. So all of that is to be determined by the state, and they're talking with the state. So again, that's why this red area here sort of says we don't really know what the state's going to require. Our road alignment could shift east or west, but in general, we're going to put a road through the development, but it could go one way or the other based on KYTC's final information. So that's number 6, pretty wordy. I wanted to make sure you understood what we're committing to and what the applicant's doing on his kind of due diligence side. Number 7's new on your plan. It went out in the packets. It's this one down here. It deals with this landscape issue right here. And number 7 basically says that the applicant agrees to provide a 25-foot greenways adjacent to Stanford Road. And one other thing I left off here. So this is a 25-foot strip that could be a sidewalk or a greenways trail. Because I think the goal is we have a trailhead kind of over here right now, and you can see the trail comes through this property and gets this way. The applicant's committing to giving 25-foot or reserving 25-foot for a trail or sidewalk to be kind of developed with the property on down the road, either by the state, the city, or combination. He's committing to building, and this is an important document right here in the bottom of this plan. This is his road kind of cross-section. The applicant's committing to an 8-foot wide shared youth path all the way through the development. So what the applicant's saying is, traditionally, if we make this connection, you can see the trails right here. What the applicant's saying is he's willing to build, as this road builds, an 8-foot wide path that would get all the way from Stanford Road to this area of the development. So we'd have a trail that goes through here. We'd have a trail that gets us to this, and eventually if we build something across here and we can get someone to make this connection, we'd have pedestrian, a way to get a trail or a sidewalk or wide sidewalk from this trailhead all the way across this frontage to the school property, and obviously we can get all the way through the development with an 8-foot wide shared youth path. So again, that would happen as the road is constructed and built, that we'd build that 8, and that commitment is right here on this concept plan. So again, you have 7 kind of detailed items. You have other things that are kind of locked in by verbiage on the plan or by these road cross sections. And I apologize about that. It's a lot of stuff, but that's the concept plan. They've put a lot of work into it, and it's a fairly big project. Moving on through to our comprehensive plan compliance. Let me get to the right map here. This is what the future land use map was that showed it all as multifamily. And as you know, the applicant revised the future land use map to mixed use commercial procedurally as we required. So far as our comprehensive plan compliance goes, pages 4 and 5 outline some goals and objectives. There's several that you can read, and most of these are in compliance with the development that the applicant's proposing. The future land use map was amended, and this project is in compliance with the existing future land use map, which is mixed use residential, which basically is a category that allows mixed uses It says that the primary land use is residential or commercial or a variety of those types in different densities balanced by complementary retail, residential, office, public, open spaces, et cetera. So that is exactly what the applicant is proposing with this kind of master plan right here, as well as that concept plan. Page 8 of your staff report starts off with staff items of concern. There are none. We've worked with the applicant now for several weeks, maybe even months on this, working through all these issues. And again, Mr. McAfee and Kendall Wise there have done an outstanding job, I think, to address all the staff concerns, at least we had as we were working through this. We're pretty comfortable with the conditions that have been submitted and the wording of those. And then page 8 outlines KRS 100-213, the findings required to approve a zoning map amendment. As you guys know, the bar is to be in compliance with the comprehensive plan as well as the future land use map. And the applicant, in the staff's opinion, does comply with the future land use maps pretty much for a one-for-one, mixed-use development, and that's exactly what the applicant's proposing with this master plan. Again, I apologize about all that. There was a lot to go through. The applicant's here. Mr. Wise is here. There may be some neighbors here that want to speak to this, and I'll be glad to answer any questions the planning commission might have of this.
Questions?
Who owns the land down by the J.E. Woods Drive that would perhaps be connected to the street? Is that the independent school district?
The city, and then KSD has property down there. So if you look at the map, and it's hard to kind of see, this is J.E. Woods, and the city has a right-of-way all the way to the property line, and then this is the KSD property. You kind of see this odd piece right here, and that's in your packet. I think the very last page should be your actual legal description. That's KSD's property too, right here. This is KSD. This is City of Danville, has a right-of-way right through here.
Okay.
So if we made that road connection, get back to the concept plan, you can see here's where J.E. Woods conceptually, it kind of shows the city's right-of-way down in this area, and you can see that's kind of the triangular piece that we just showed. So the street could come through and make a nice straight connection like this, and we might have to figure out how to kind of get it across that property. It could just come down and do this. And again, that's why the concept plan's a tad bit loose on these two ends. But again, looking at the master plan, the intention is that the street would kind of come through. So this section right here would have to be a partnership, city, the applicant, and KSD. And again, I think it would be a big improvement in our community to think about having a cross street to go from Second. If this develops in any kind of retail fashion, folks that live in these neighborhoods could walk, take the trail, there's a park, and get to this retail. These folks that live here can get to a great city park. It's down in this area on J.E. Woods, and it makes a good cross connection through town. So folks don't have to go all the way in town and come back out. There's a way to get through our street, through basically a new connector street, if you think about it, if it's developed in this fashion. It's a good question.
Other questions, commission? Hearing none, this being a public hearing, anyone in the audience like to speak in favor of this zone change request? If so, come to the mic, introduce yourself, and give your address, please.
I'm Sarah Ballcamp. I live on Shadeland Drive in Danville. I just have
Just your exact address.
875 Shadeland Drive, Danville, 40422. I think there are many good things about this, and I don't have any big objection. I know you're going to ask for that in a minute, but I have a question, and that involves building the landscape business on the floodplain. I don't know whether that's a concern or not, having to do with Clark's Run and so forth.
Kendall, you want to address that, please? Introduce yourself.
Kendall Wise, Vantage Engineering. And anytime you put a building in a floodplain, there's permits that you have to apply for and get permission from the state to do so. So in general, you're not going to see buildings being constructed in the floodplain. So not to say that it's not impossible to get a permit to do so, but typically you don't see that happening. And So as far as buildings getting built in the floodplain, that's probably not going to happen. If it were a temporary structure such as a greenhouse or something like that, that would, that could potentially happen. Their value is not that great, and greenhouses and temporary structures such as that maybe aren't required to have building permits, so there's not going to be any authority that's going to say you can't put a greenhouse in the floodplain. Plus, floodplains are obviously where all the alluvial soils are, and those are the greatest places to grow things. So as far as growing plants in the floodplain, that's going to work out really well. And so it's just going to, for the most part, be agricultural activity that's going to happen in the floodplain, not necessarily buildings.
Okay, thank you.
Question, Kendall? I have a question.
Yes.
Since by definition, things in a floodplain could wind up flooding it in a river or in the Clark's Run or whatever, are there any restrictions that are placed on what you can put in a floodplain in terms of anything that could get, flooded into the river if there is a flood?
Mm-hmm. Well, when we talk about building buildings in the floodplain, the permit is a permit that you have to specify how much fill you're placing in the floodplain. So they're wanting to know details of what the material is that you're adding to the floodplain, whether it's dirt or concrete, bridge, or a house. So if you put a land, if you just start dumping trash in the floodplain and a flood occurs and all your trash goes downstream, then you would be liable for littering or whatever the consequences are of what you've done there. But there aren't people or there aren't organizations going around patrolling that.
Well, for example, could I put, bulk fertilizer, store bulk fertilizer in a floodplain?
I think, there's some common sense that comes into play there, and Michael can address if he has a detailed plan for what he's gonna do there.
Do it. Yeah. My name's Michael McAfee. I'm the applicant. Currently, down in that lower section, it kind of shows right in there some future trees, shrubs, material that's going to be stored in ground and to grow future over the years to maturity size. What I'm planning on is my business right there where he's pointing at, kind of up away from the floodplain, and then having more of plant material that, for say, if it does flood, will not harm the streams, we're not going to do anything, putting fertilizer, bulk, salt, bulk, anything like that, mulch that would wash away, that would get down in the rivers or streams, we're trying to make that place look top-notch, and I just don't want it to create an issue later on.
I don't think it'd be prudent to put anything in that floodplain. You're going to,
Right.
it's a value.
Right,
You're gonna
and there's not going to be anything that substantial value in that area.
Yeah, that
So,
wouldn't be prudent.
so because anything that floods would just obviously go away over a day or two, and that's why something like plants is not going to be a huge issue in that area.
Mr. McAfee,
Any other questions for Michael? Anyone else like to speak in favor?
I got one item. While Mr. McAfee's at the podium, do you agree to all the conditions that Mr. Hunter recited, 1 through 7, on the conceptual development plan?
Yes, sir, 1 through 7, yes.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Well, I'm going to just speak about concerns.
Go to the mic first, please.
Is this a time to do that?
This is speaking in favor of.
I'm sort of in the middle.
Well,
Well, go ahead.
if you just have questions, we'll wait and get to your questions.
Okay. My name is Robbie Henson. I'm with Pioneer Playhouse, which is probably the business and property most affected by this development. And I have to say that this is a huge change to this part of town. This is the historic Wilderness Road. Stephen Powell is there. The Brousseau's Winery is there. Admiral Stadium is there. We get 20,000 tourists coming through Pioneer Playhouse, and so we feel like this is a very important corridor. I have to say that the plan that Steve did put forward, does look like it's a quality project. I think my concern is to make sure that if you are doing this kind of radical change to this historic corridor, it is a quality project. And my concern is to make it look good. Right now, we did have a green border that bordered Stanford Road, but we did have that, but those trees were cut down. And what we have now is a dirt pit. And I just want to wonder if we are going to see a continuation of this kind of quality plan, or if there are going to be shortcuts made. And honestly, we also have a property on 2nd Street and Main. And Mr. McAfee, you do have this huge mulch pile that the rain takes it down the street, and we're a little concerned about that. And I don't mean to criticize. I just want this to look nice and not to have shortcuts taken. I do wish that the green border on the east side was the kind of green border that would be on the Stanford Road side. Basically, the green border that's there described now is it's just not a parking lot, and it's got a path easement. But it doesn't say that there's any kind of green trees or anything of that nature. And this is a historic corridor, and I think everybody's entitled to do with their property sort of what they want to do. I just would encourage it to be a good neighbor project and a project that would look nice.
Thank you.
I'll address one of the issues on your behalf. Because it's a good point. One thing to point out, it doesn't show the 25-foot. That's reserved for a future trail, sidewalk. And what it's doing is shifting all the buildings back further than they could potentially be. The road could change based on what the state may need or the developer needs to do. The trees coming down, that's part of development. Unfortunately, we're going to have to make some access into the property. We're going to have to deal with some site distance issues. Those trees were kind of right on the road, and they were different caliber. But what's going to happen to, I think, to make the development feel even better is ultimately there'll be landscape requirements for all these businesses. There won't be no landscaping through here. There'll be a path or a sidewalk 25 foot, but then every one of these businesses that front the road have an individual landscape requirement that you guys are used to invoking on every kind of development. It's not of the quality or the style or maybe the intensity, that's a better word, that he's proposing here, but there'll be a landscape requirement if potentially these buildings develop, all these parking areas have to be screened and buffered through there under the landscape ordinance. And as you know, as we drive out there now, regardless of, what we think of the road, most of the businesses that we see through there have no landscape requirements. They're all predate the landscape. Most of the parking lots, gas stations, apartments, very little landscaping has been done to the developments until the new project that's on David down there. Almost none of the businesses meet our landscape ordinance traditionally. We have parking that goes right out to the street. It's no curbs, gutters. As you guys know, it's pretty much asphalt to the Stanford Road. So this is really the first project that's going to come in and make a substantial development that kind of meets all the modern requirements for parking, curbing, access, setbacks, and then again, that 25-foot is an additional 25-foot trail. So I think over time, to alleviate some of those concerns, to think that we might have a 25-foot width with potentially a kind of showcase style walking trail or wide sidewalk, curb and gutter, potentially, and a street cut, and then screened parking lots, I think it'll look attractive, especially with those building elevations and that quality. Now, what can get this off, and I think Mr. Henson's right, things could change. It really comes down to the type of client. If this looks good on paper, but if the first one in is, some kind of odd use that traditionally you wouldn't think would build an attractive building or sustain that style of development, you can imagine where this can get off a little bit. But I think the developer's intention is to build a quality product out there and market these retail lots. And again, I know the intention would have been to leave that tree line there, but there's not too many places in town where we develop commercial property in a pretty big scale where we leave existing tree lines like that. It's just not conducive to think that any retail is going to develop behind that kind of existing kind of buffer that's natural. But to leave those kind of buffers in the rear are very advantageous to neighbors. And again, all the plan there is to leave all that existing tree line in this area to keep this and keep the trail kind of in its natural setting. And again, to put as strong a buffer into play we can for this existing residential.
I have a question.
Yes?
The dirt hole that he was referring to that's there at the entrance now, is that something that's gonna stay there until the development starts?
I'll
Or
let,
is
I'll let
that-
Michael talk about that. Yeah.
Clarify that a little bit. So the dirt hole that you see currently there, the hole was originally there to begin with. It wasn't as noticeable because there was cover and grass, and you didn't really notice it until you take off that top layer. The reason behind it is we took off the first 2 or 3 feet of topsoil, pushed it up in a pile, because in landscape business, that's our goal. I mean, that's what we use. And we're gonna come in and build that elevation up down in that hole to where we could use those lots to where they need to be at, and not a building down in the bottom of a hole. So that is all gonna be properly filled with proper material. It's not gonna be material that's just free for whoever wants to come in and dump material and stuff. So, because if you're ever gonna put a building on this, it has to be sound. So, so this will be eventually start to fill up, compacted, leveled off, to be able to put a future building in that site. And then the pile of topsoil is there for use. So, and that will have a grow cover on it, so, until used.
Anyone else like to speak in favor of the zone change request? Hearing none, anyone like to speak in opposition? Hearing none, we would, at this time, entertain a motion to close the hearing.
Make a motion to close the public hearing?
And
I'll second.
Susie seconds. Okay. Counselor, at this time, do we need to set a date certain? Can we go ahead and vote on this? What's our procedure at this point?
I'm prepared to get the movement adequate findings that we want to vote on right now.
What's the pleasure of the commission?
What's the question again?
Whether we want to go ahead and vote on it now or set a date certain at the next meeting?
I'm not uncomfortable voting right now.
Susie?
I would make the motion to approve this proposed zone change.
Okay.
Ms. Kelly, would you?
It's gonna ask you to word it.
Part of your motion, these findings that the proposal agrees with the future land use map and the goals, objectives listed in the staff report.
Absolutely.
Okay. We have a motion, need a second?
I'll second.
David seconds that. Question, discussion on the motion to approve as stated by Counselor as the content of the motion. Hearing none, all in favor? Jim? Thank you, I couldn't, vote's unanimous. Thank you all very much. Item 2, Danville-Boyle County Planning has filed an amendment to Chapter 1 Goals and Objectives. We're gonna hear that amendment, I take it.
Yeah, at the last meeting, as you remember, we talked about the 5 years. It's kind of come and gone. I'll just leave that one up as a placeholder. We'll just work out of your packet. For our goals and objectives, we have a comprehensive plan that was adopted in March of 2017, amended this past year for the Chapter 9. Our goals and objectives were actually done kind of piecemeal at the beginning of the development of the new comprehensive plan. So as you look into that handout that you got, page 3 of that kind of acknowledgement part, you can see the goals and objectives for the county and the cities were all done back in 2012. So we kind of hit that 5-year mark, and the statute, KRS 100-197, talks about the adoption of the comprehensive plan elements and periodic amendment or readoption. What it directs planning commissions to do is to look at your goals and objectives at least once every 5 years. You can reaffirm those, you can change them, you can do what you want. I was a little surprised that those were 2012 and our plan was 2017. Some new comprehensive plans are adopted all at one time and you get one date for the goals and objective and the plan elements, but they were adopted again kind of separately. So the goals and objectives, they're in your packet, should look like the front of our comprehensive plan, which say Danville Comprehensive Plan, March 2001, March 1, 2017. And what we've actually proposed is some amendments to the goals and objectives, and they're minor, but I think they're important. And at last month's meeting, we talked about what your pleasure may be on these goals and objectives, and you guys suggested if we need to amend them, let's amend them. So we had to formally set the public hearing, and this is what this is, a public hearing on Chapter 1 of the comprehensive plan, which are the goals and objectives. We also had to notify by the statute all the adjacent counties, all the planning commissions, the Bluegrass ad. It's a requirement in the statute that whenever we touch our comprehensive plan, we have to let everyone around us know we're touching our comprehensive plan and give them the ability to comment on our plan. So we did that. We sent out lots of letters. We got 0 comments back, just like the last time we amended the comprehensive plan and the time before that. No counties around us gave us any relevant comments on the Boyle County Comprehensive Plan amendment. But who did look at it, we did take it to the Smart Growth Group. Some of the folks are here. We took this amendment to them and had a good discussion with them. They helped us wordsmith a couple things. They think this meets some of the things we'd like to see in our goals and objectives. And again, the goals and objectives are important. We use them in zone changes. They lead off our plan. They're fluffy in nature. And by the way, most of them are still very relevant and read very well. But we did make a few proposed amendments. You should have those in red and underlined strike-through fashion, very few strike-throughs. And let me just mention the first one there. Under goals and objectives, general land development, you can see we just added the second half of a sentence. We had a goal that said to recognize and preserve irreplaceable integrity and character of Boyle County and its cities. That was the goal. And as I think I've mentioned before, nowhere in Chapter 1 did we talk about the fact we have a future land use map and how important it is to utilize that and follow it. So we just stuck a second sentence on there that says, by creating a framework to manage growth and promote sustainable, balanced, and predictable patterns of land use consistent with the ability to provide adequate public services and facilities. By the way, that's smart growth 101 right there. The very next objective underneath it basically says, how do we do that? How are we supposed to do that? Well, Objective 1 explains it. It says by utilizing the future land use map to guide land uses and development proposals. We thought that was an important addition in Chapter 1. It talks about our flume. It talks about the importance of having one, puts it front and center in our document as opposed to way in the back. Economic development's the same. Environmental goals are just unbelievably well written. No change that we had on those. Very few changes all the way through the goals and objectives for community facilities, transportation. A lot of these are still relevant and read very, very well. In fact, the housing, on page 4, the housing goal and objective, those couldn't be more spot on. They're perfect. And they talk about the goals we have, which is basically to encourage and support the efforts to have affordable housing, housing mixes and densities. That's exactly what we want to try to do over the next few years. So again, most of these goals and objectives I think are still pretty good. Get to land use. We took some liberties with the land use goals and objectives on page 7 and 8. Again, the land use goal 1, we had one goal. We've turned this into 2 goals and some objectives. Goal 1 just said to provide adequate and appropriate locations for all land uses. We said by utilizing our flume and making decisions based on the flume. So we just added a second half of a sentence under that land use goal. And then goal 2 is all new stuff, and you guys can read it. But this gets to the heart of what smart growth is and what good, sound communities would want to set as goals to do things in their community to set themselves apart from communities that don't have planning and zoning, for example. Again, these are kind of fluffy in nature, the bottom of page 7 and 8, but we think they read pretty good, and they try to set the tone of where we're trying to go in our community when it comes to land use. Goal 2 says to encourage compact, sustainable, high-quality development which promotes community character, provides balanced land uses, and which is tailored to a variety of urban, suburban, and rural sections of Boyle County. Pretty fluffy, but I think the goal there is hey, we want to do things at a high quality in our county, and how do we do that? And there's the objectives right below it. To better address open space, roadway connectivity, greenways, walking trails, stream corridor, floodplain protection, sustainability to natural environment, tree protection, walkable, bike-friendly communities, better accommodation of multiple housing types, parks and schools. Again, you look at this, page 8 and the last page of page 9, and that's a to-do list for us. this directive, these objectives are basically now telling us what we need in our zoning ordinance to get there. But again, I think if you agree with those general objectives, that that's what we want to do in our community when we're looking at developments, I think, again, and the Smart Growth Group, I think, concurs with this, that these are the type of things that we'd want to put in our plan to set it above, I would say, other comprehensive plans in the state, to say here in Danville-Boyle County, Junction City, Perryville, we want a high-quality development. We want to do things right in our community when it comes to development and you know, preserving our county for some things and developing in the others. So again, we don't use these a lot. You guys know that. Goals and objectives are in the plan. But I think they read well. They would be a nice amendment to this as a procedural. It brings these things into compliance. This is a pretty big task. If you guys pass these goals and objectives, we have to send them out to all the governments to be ratified. It takes a while. It's confusing when they get this. They don't get these all the time, like zone changes. Why do we need the goals and objectives? Why are we looking at them again? I thought we just passed it. This type of stuff we'll have to go through with all the governments. But if you guys see fit to pass this amendment to the goals and objectives, we'd have to send it out to the governments. Once this is ratified, again, the statute requires us to send all this stuff to all the neighboring counties again, just to let them know we did it. So maybe someday that statute will get revised. That seems like a lot of postage for no reason, in my opinion. But we appreciate you guys giving us direction to at least attempt to amend this. This was fun for the staff, and I appreciate meeting with the other group and then giving us feedback, correcting typos that I tend to make. So, glad there are any questions.
This being a public hearing, does anyone like to speak to this issue of the goals and objectives being presented? Okay, your name and address again, please.
Sarah Ballcamp, 875 Shadeland, Danville.
Thank you.
Yes, I am here to represent Smart Growth, and I want to just say, repeat again who we are exactly. But first, I want to thank Steve for including us in the discussion to go through all this, because we certainly support passing this amendment to the comprehensive plan. And I'm not going to repeat all the things that he went through in detail with you, but the only thing I'm going to disagree with Steve about is I don't think they're fluffy. I think they're a very workable document, and it's not something that you pass and then put on the shelf. And because there's very important information here, and when we do go to the city and county governments, I'm going to stand up again and say, look at this. This is a framework for how we want development in our area. And also, I think it's good we have to send these things to neighboring groups. I mean, it might inspire them to do something. So who knows? Maybe they won't read it. I don't know. But Smart Growth has been in existence as a group for about 5 years. We have a steering committee. We have a large email group of interested citizens we come to many of your meetings, but we have a large group that we keep informed, and they are interested in what's going on and what you do. You have a very important job, and you have hard decisions to make, and we appreciate your time and energy in doing all that. Yes, Steve is exactly right. These things mirror Smart Growth. If you got on the internet and just put Smart Growth in, you would see so many websites and groups that promote that. And so I'll just leave you with a little one-page thing. What is Smart Growth? It's certainly for economic development. It's just for a balance between all these things that are in the goals and objectives. So thank you again, and I vote yes. If I had a vote.
Anyone else like to speak to this issue?
Mr. Chairman, do we need to strike the word fluffy from the minutes?
Possibly so. If not, we'll have a motion to conclude the public hearing on approving the goals and objectives.
I move to close the public hearing.
Susie moves to close. Second. Jim seconds. All in favor? Vote unanimous. And we need a motion, please.
Well, I'll make the motion that we accept the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan as submitted in the revised March 1st, 2017 document.
Motion's been made to accept and approve.
Second.
David seconds. Question, discussion on the motion. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous. Thank you. Under new business advisory committee, I don't think we have anything to report there. Personnel committee, nothing to report that I'm aware of. And budget committee report, anything there, Terry?
Yeah, just to wrap up the recommendation, Budget Committee's recommendation on legal services.
Okay.
And we are at the point where we're ready to make that recommendation. And this has got to do with the RFP that we issued several months ago for providing legal services for both planning and zoning and Board of Adjustments. And we did receive 3 responses on that RFP. One from the Bruce E. Smith Law Firm, one from Helton, Walter and Associates, and one from Sheehan, Barnett, Dean, Pennington, Little, and Dexter. And again, we had multiple criteria that we used to evaluate these proposals. And that was evaluated by the Budget Committee, plus Jerry was present as well. And based on the information submitted and our discussions that we had in a couple of different committee meetings, we are going to be recommending that the Bruce E. Smith Law Firm be given the contract to provide these legal services. And so the last several weeks, we've been involved with finalizing that written contract. That's now been finalized. It's in your packet. Just a real quick summary. It's 1 year. It's an $18,600 flat fee for all planning and zoning and Board of Adjustment services, with the exception of any circuit court and higher litigation, which will then be handled on an hourly rate. And it's the Budget Committee's recommendation that we approve this contract agreement.
Okay. Questions with regard to the contract being presented? Mr. Smith, are you all satisfied with this, I hope?
Yes, sir, we are.
Thank you. Need a motion?
I make a motion to approve this?
Susie moves we approve,
Second.
and Jim seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor, vote unanimous. Thank you. Item 4, under other new business, NCC zoning conversion request.
Yeah, this is
Dr. Chambers, 1620 Shakertown Road.
Yeah, and Mr. Chambers is sitting in the back, and I'll do a lead off real quick on this, and we'll explain what's happening and why he's here, and I apologize, he sat through the whole meeting, but this is at the tail end of the agenda. You should have this at your seat with some yellow on the front of it. It's not gonna be legible on the screen, but I'm gonna show you something else on the screen. But this is the NCC amendment, was done in 2011. Let me explain to you why we're here and why Mr. Chambers has a request that's very unique, and he's seeking guidance from the Planning Commission. Before we get into all that verbiage, I'm gonna put the map up. Let's do that. Let's show you what we got going on here. All right, this is the property out there on Shakertown Road. Brook Cove was the development, as you guys probably know it. Brook Cove is north of town on Shakertown. You can see it's zoned NCC, and everything around it's GRA and then AR1. There's a little business here, there's a convenience store, and at one point this was zoned all at one time in 1987 to C2. We had different names back before 2004 when we adopted this newer zoning ordinance, and we converted all these names and all these terms and all these districts. This was what we called C2 zoning. We had a C1, we had a C2. I think I put that on here. You guys can't read this, but we had AR1, we had R1, R2, R3, R3T, P1, C1, HC, C2, L1, and I1 and I. When we adopted all these new terms, GRA, GRB, IBD, on and on and on, all these acronyms, we converted all of these things to something. Well, what happened was we converted R3 to a district called NCC, which was, at that point, by mistake, was a commercial district. So in 2004, when we put the new zoning ordinance to record, the NCC district was a mixed-use development. You could do commercial, you could do multifamily, you could do retail, office, and we made that, and we converted the R3 to NCC, which in effect meant everything in the community that was zoned NCC around town. When you see these little blurbs of NCC, all of those used to be R3. And when we converted them, we basically opened up the door potentially for resident or for retail or office. So when that was figured out a few years later, and we've looked through the history of this, in 2011, the Planning Commission attempted to correct that problem. And what they did, and that's the handout you have in your hand there, is it says, by mistake or inadvertence, we converted the R3 to NCC, which is a commercial district. The fix was, as opposed to maybe fixing the map, the fix was to take all the rules from NCC, which were commercial and mixed, and move them into the NCR-A and B district, which was multifamily and single family, and make NCC single family, duplex, or multifamily. So in a sense, that fixed all the R3 conversion problem. However, what happened also was the C2 district was converted. So we zoned property commercial back under the old zoning, and we correctly converted it to NCC at 2004. But in 2011, when we changed the rules of NCC to multifamily, we made 8 or so properties non-conforming. By again, the same kind of verbiage you could say in those whereas clauses, by mistake or inadvertence, we have made some commercial properties multifamily. So this property north of town was zoned C2, had an application. Here's the plan that was submitted in 1987. We zoned this entire property C2 with a potential building, parking. All of this stayed, at that point, R1. And then in 2013, this was subdivided. There's already other buildings. This gentleman has bought this, and his business partner have bought this property and are running an automobile-related business there that has existed there for a number of years. What brought all this up is they are wanting to expand the business slightly as well as deal with some signage issues. And when they came into our office to ask for signs or business, we said, hey, you're zoned NCC. That's multifamily. You're non-conforming or grandfathered in. You basically can't grow the footprint. Their argument was, well, this property was zoned commercial. How did it go from commercial to multifamily? And why would it? Well, the way it did was this process. So going back, and I want to walk you through some stuff. There's the newspaper article when we zoned this thing in '87. Our ad in the paper. I think that says February 4, '87 up there. We had a public hearing, and we zoned that property to, at that time, C2. What's been a mystery to me to this day, still, and I can't seem to resolve this, is I know what everything converted to. So if you tell me something was zoned R1 back in 1982, I know that's GRA. The C2 zonings converted to NCC, and the R3s converted at the same time. So again, when we converted C2, you would have thought the C2 would have went to NCRA and the R3 to NCC, and then the fix, when we swapped it, we would have fixed them both. However, the paper you have in your hand when we created the NCR-A and B district doesn't allow garages or service stations or convenience stores. So right now, under the current zoning ordinance, there's really only one zoning district that fits this gentleman's business, which is highway commercial. Because nothing that we created in the current zoning ordinance is compatible to C2, which was neighborhood commercial back in the day. The only district we have that's like that is what Mr. McAfee just zoned, which is NCR-C, which would be a mixed use. But if you look in that handout you got there, it actually prohibits garages and gas stations. Not only that, to complicate this a tad bit further, and I'll walk you through this, this is not in your packet. So what we did is we found all the property that was zoned NCC, and again, you have this in your packet. It shows, again, this whereas clause. It says what we did and what we tried to do. It talks about we retitled the district. We changed the rules of the NCC to be single and duplex and multi. We specifically say what you can do with conditional uses. And then we created this other district. NCR-A and B existed, but we created the C, and we said what we can do. And what we can't do, and gas stations can be a conditional use. Anything automobile related, garages is a prohibited use. And there's a typo right there. It says NCC, and that should be NCR-C. And that's in our current ordinance today. But the problem that we've got is, how do we fix it? How do we get this thing right? But it isn't just his property, and he wants, the canned answer a couple years back or whatever would be, if you were NCC and you were a commercial business and this conversion happened, the answer would have been, well, you need to rezone it. His kind of counter to me when I said, well, one option is to rezone is, why should I have to fix it? Why aren't you all fixing it? And that's a realistic issue. I mean, we created this, and this property was specifically zoned C2 by an applicant in 1987 that through this conversion to conversion kind of got all kind of messed up. It's not just his property, though. So again, we looked at all the properties in town that are zoned NCC, and we've got property on the bypass that's currently vacant that was C2 that now is NCC. So basically you can do apartments, but you can't do retail. A lot of the things were multifamily or apartments, but funny enough, nursing homes here. Another issue. Back in the day, R3 allowed a nursing home. The current NCC doesn't allow nursing homes. So when we converted everything from R3 to NCC, not only did we kind of mess up some things that were zoned C2, but there were things that were actually zoned R3 that currently are prohibited in the NCC district. So you've got two nursing home locations here. You've got a commercial development on 4th Street. You got this building here, City Hall, and our parking lot zoned multifamily. And as you got, I don't know the history, but I believe this used to be a retail location that was C2. This is one of the C2s that kind of got out of whack a little bit too. And then again, a lot of single family. And again, we went through each location, and some of these have multiple properties because these were kind of general areas on the map, 18, 19, 20. And as you're going through, we have a church. Again, back in the old R3, churches were allowed. Today, churches are not allowed in the current NCC. You'd have to be zoned something else. So again, if any of these churches are coming and ask us for new signs or expansions, we typically tell them, hey, you're non-conforming, you can't expand. You're kind of locked in, although a lot of these were correct before. So there's a church, there's another church, First Baptist. Here's another children's home on Perryville Road. Here's the same owner, different location. Here's another nursing home. Here's Bluegrass Regional Mental Health on 6th. It was zone C2. It's now NCC. Here's another commercial business that was C2, converted to NCC. Here's another church. Here is the country club. It's zoned multifamily. That one is odd because back then the country club was labeled R3 because again, you could do other things in R3 than we allow in NCC. So it was legal at one point, but again, we don't have many problems there. You're not going to see a ton of expansions, but in theory, if they wanted to expand, they're non-conforming too. Here's an assisted living facility on Argyle Woods. And then this comes to the property Brook Cove Center on Shakertown, which was zoned commercial. So Mr. Chambers is here to ask for your assistance. They're not against zoning the property themselves, but they've bought this business. They want to expand the business, get some new signage, dress it up a little bit, and they're locked in under this non-conforming situation. I'm at a loss to figure out how we fix this at this point in time. If we did one, I think it would be easy. We would do a staff-initiated zone change similar to what we did in Perryville, and we'd reclassify this. The problem we're having is I don't know what zoning district is a fair comparison because what C2 was neighborhood commercial. We don't have such a district that fits them today. The only real fix would be to make it highway commercial, which I think is an intensity level above what was additionally promised to the neighborhood. It doesn't fit. It doesn't fit the rural commercial. It doesn't fit the NCR-A, NCR-B, or NCR-C. Only highway commercial. So we really never created a space for those old neighborhood businesses that used to, what we called C2. C1s became downtown, the downtown district. So I'm not sure if, that we want this to be highway commercial. I guess we'd find out if we had a public hearing what the neighbors thought of that, but this was Zone C2 back in '87. The other issue is we really need to fix all these things at one time. Country Club would be pretty easy, but you see all these little pockets of NCC all over the map. We really need to fix all of those things that we sort of made non-conforming, those nursing homes, those churches, those retail businesses. So it'd be a map exercise similar to Perryville, where we'd have to go in and fix all these, talk to all the property owners, get their permission, and we'd come forward with some kind of proposal to amend those dozen or so properties. And Bruce, you can chime in here. I'm not sure the challenge, and again, it would seem easy just to relabel that property, but there's not a zoning district that really matches the old C2.
What's the adjacent property?
Excuse me, what was that?
What's
Which is
the-
a significant limitation. I mean,
Yeah.
the fact that you don't have a zone that you can just flip it to that fits it, I mean, it's easy enough the process is easy enough, but the dilemma is you don't have a comparable zone to go to.
Well, we did in 2004. We had the C2 correct. It was the 2011 amendment that fixed all the R3 and changed all the rules into both districts. It really then made it where, because it specifically legislates out garages and gas stations. And that was added in 2011. So it's odd, that commercial district, NCR-A, B, and C, doesn't even allow, you can do any kind of retail up to 30,000 square foot. You can do mixed use, apartments, offices, but you can't do a garage or gas station. The only place you can do a garage or gas station under our ordinance right now is highway commercial or industrial.
So what's the adjacent property where the store is? Yeah, right.
Around it, or what's next?
No, right beside it.
Well,
There.
right now, this is still somewhat of a convenience store and a laundromat, is that correct?
The laundromat is.
Vacant.
There's a dog grooming business on the corner towards my side of the property, and it's like a gas station.
And again, and then they're in the automobile-related business here.
The convenience store with the gas.
Yeah.
What is it zoned?
NCC, multifamily. That's all one district right there. So again, this was all zoned as one piece and it was subdivided, and it's two owners now. I would suggest if we focus just on this property, we'd fix all of this. But we're right back to, I'm a little concerned that if we label that highway commercial, that's a whole different intensity than where we put highway commercial in our community right now on these bigger roads, the bypass, for example.
What if you add gas stations back into,
NCR-C, and then we'd have to flip it to that. That's a possibility. That's a text amendment to the zoning ordinance and fixing the map. Of course, we're in the middle of trying to revise the zoning ordinance. We're in the drafting phase. Advisory committee hopefully is going to meet later this month or next month to get into the zoning ordinance, and that would be, we will have a district that allows these less intense commercial uses. What their immediate need is, they've got a building expansion and a sign request that we can't grant from a permit standpoint because it's zoned multifamily. And so,
So did we actually create this issue?
I think we did. I think if it was zone C2 back in '87, in 2004, the C2 should have matched up with something. It did when it was the old NCC and the old rules that were NCC, it fit. But the R3 was also converted, which didn't fit. And so when I went through all those slides of those 40 properties, 3/4 of those were multifamily that were mislabeled, so those had to be corrected. Or you could have had commercial creep into neighborhoods. So the NCC had to be fixed. At that point, when they swapped the rules, they probably should have swapped some of the map. And really going on back, looking at it, probably should just fix the map from day one. Should have just said, all the things that are R3 will relabel on the map, and everything that's commercial will relabel to something on the map. But we swapped rules in the zoning ordinance and created some prohibitions in the new commercial side that causes this one a little bit of a problem. As well as all those churches, assisted living, and nursing homes, they're in the same boat. They fit the old zoning ordinance, they don't fit the current zoning ordinance, and they're all non-conforming today.
So you're expecting that as part of this upcoming process, we may create another zone that would address what these other properties?
Well, if we get the text and zoning ordinance ever redone, it's gonna be my recommendation, we maybe go back to some different naming.
I'm saying,
I think going back to.
longer term, we might address all these other.
Yeah, I think we would
projects.
naturally need a neighborhood business style category. There's some businesses that we want to allow out in the county or out a small road that's not highway business, you know,
I guess my question is,
drive-throughs.
can we limit today's discussion just as how to address this particular issue, knowing it may be a short-term fix and the longer-term fix is coming with a broader changes?
I think Mr. Chambers' issue was just to see if you guys were interested in letting the staff take a shot at this to try to fix it, as opposed to him filing a zone change and paying $495 and going down that road.
Oh, yeah.
When it was zone C2 already. It'd be nice if we could just fix the map somehow, and I'm looking to our attorney down there, if there's a way we can just say in some kind of error fix process, there's a way we can just relabel the map without having to go through a formal process, but I don't know how we not bring a zone change here and go through a formal process.
I don't believe that process exists.
Yeah.
What process, Bruce?
Process of changing a zone by simply unilaterally recoloring the map.
Unless we could figure out the map was initially supposed to be a different, that the C2 was supposed to go into a different district, but we can't find any evidence of that at this point.
So what can we do to help him
Yeah.
resolve a problem that he didn't create, but maybe
I'll
we
take
created?
direction from our attorney, and you guys, we're willing to do whatever. Bruce, I mean, if you think, I mean, should the
Tell me
staff?
You just
file-
said it's almost impossible to do anything, so what am I supposed to say?
Well, I guess what I would think is that the staff would file some kind of a zoning map amendment.
Sure.
And at this point, the only option is to request maybe go to highway commercial,
Which
notify the
you need to
neighbors. and-
consider the implication of that,
Yeah.
because it's a more intensive use.
Very intense.
But can't the staff fix as part of their proposal, go to highway commercial with limitations at this point, with the
possible.
understanding that a new zone is gonna be created longer term?
We
I mean,
could do some-
can conditions be put on this exception that we're
It's
making
true.
here? So it isn't, you know, a broad base.
If
highway
the,
commercial.
if the applicant were to agree as part of the process to impose some restrictive covenants
Yeah.
on the property, I suppose that's a fix.
This gets in the weeds, that's the difference between us filing the zone change, like when we did Perryville, you know, us to do a map initiative from the staff, there's different notice requirements. We don't tend to put conditions forward, property owners put conditions forward. So in that case, what I think is probably, to fix his down in the vacuum, you could think they could be the applicant with conditions. Maybe we waive the fees or something of that nature, but he would have to put forward conditions on his property. We typically would fix 30 properties and then
Right.
impose conditions as a staff, if we're the ones doing the filing as opposed to that
Yeah, but
applicant.
couldn't the applicant and you sit down and agree on what those conditions would be, that it meets your needs, understanding where we're going longer term, that we're gonna fix this whole thing longer term?
I have the support of everybody in that.
I'm sorry, I can't.
I have the support of the neighborhood in front of me and everyone in back. I've cleaned the creek, I've cleaned the whole area. I'm trying to make this what it used to be. It's an entrance to Danville. It used to be one of the nicest places. I'm from Berkeley. So that's the first thing you see. So I not only have to do this, but I'm trying to do this to have a nice sign, a nice parking lot, to separate myself from what once was the gas station, which is a building that should be forgiven.
One of the big commitments that was made in '87, as you can see, is they had to leave, this property line's back here, they had to leave all this residential to the rear. So when they zoned this footprint, actually the property line's back here. So this was a natural, back then, R1 buffer that was a kind of a no-build zone to give these neighbors, again, all this was done at one time, but to make sure that there was some separation. But if we filed a zone change, obviously anyone that lives on any side, they'd be getting letters. There'd be signs on the property. We just have to deal with whoever shows up and bring the concerns and.
I could personally speak to each one, but they've all already come to me and said, thank you.
So again, can't we go ahead and say, go ahead, Steve, sit down with the property owner and see who can come up with a proposed fix where he doesn't have to pay the $400 and some dollars, understanding that longer term, this will be fixed by a new zone.
Do you all prefer us fix his, or try to attempt to do all 8
I
or
would
12 of
just
those at
fix
one
his,
time?
Just
I'd say
fix
fix
his.
his right
Yeah.
now.
Okay,
Yeah, and then we'll try to take everybody else under the longer term
I
fix.
think the restrictive covenant approach
Yeah,
is probably
right.
the way to go.
Changes in the future, I'm a big fan of the rules. I'll be more than happy to pay for whatever change there is. It's just that right now, I'm trying very hard to make this nice. And it's such a huge detraction beside me. I've blocked off my parking lot. The police have been a great help for me. And it's hard for me to make this place nice. It's hard for people to, when it comes to my place, because it's still imagined that I'm somehow connected to Brookville. That place has become such a, I doubt anybody has been in there in the last few years. If you were to go in there, you would know why. There's only one working gas pump. The building itself is about to collapse in the middle. I've spoken with the owners. They're not willing to change anything. I cut the vegetation in the back where we improved, cleaned it out. Drugs back there, so we can improve. I was willing to clean the whole back side of the gas station, but not my property, just so I wouldn't have to worry about people doing stuff. I was told I could only cut back so much because there was supposed to be a barrier between the neighborhood, but the neighbors don't want to see a barrier from trash and homes. It's long term. Just trying to make it as nice as possible.
That's a code enforcement issue, isn't it? It's not.
It is, and I've spoken with code enforcement, I said, I've sent them pictures of the inside of the dry cleaner itself is about to collapse. It is in the middle of the building. The owner would not meet with me, he sent a manager there to me. Even he couldn't go to the gas station. He only said, I was there a couple weeks ago. And it's not just the building, it's the kind of people that go to traffic. There's a neighborhood, these people live 30, 40 feet above, looking over the top. They watch everybody sell drugs in their parking lot. They lock mine on and put security cameras up all over the building. And since I've done that, it's all on my side.
we're just gonna zone
We
it.
can't control that.
We're just gonna try to fix the zone.
Yeah, we're just trying to fix the zoning thing. That's all we can do.
If I could have the zone changed,
Well-
put it in the zone, I could do the little things that make the business, the kind of place where nice people see, it's a nice place. and that's
Sure. Steve,
We'll do
y'all
it.
get together and work that out?
We'll figure it out.
Okay, good.
Yeah, just so the commission's aware, Lisa brought up that there are already some restrictions possibly imposed on this land, either through a lawsuit or by a restrictive covenant, which we'll have to consider in terms of trying to get this all
Yeah,
worked out.
There were also conditions imposed with the zoning that aren't, actually, I guess, still in effect, even though they don't comply with any of the NCC zoning directives. So we'll have to incorporate those original conditions too.
Maybe it's a question of landscaping or neighbors, I'm gonna do that.
It'll be more of the standard what initially was put in place when it was developed, so. Well, that's good. We'll take it from there, I guess. We'll figure something out.
Do you need a motion, or you just? This is
No,
what
it was
you need?
more
I don't
just
think so.
information, I think.
Okay. All
Appreciate
right.
that.
Okay.
Next item is the meeting schedule for 2019.
Yep, let's do this. I put 2 drafts in here for a couple reasons. This gets back to this finance report that you guys saw earlier. The first meeting schedule proposal looks just like we typically would. First Wednesday of every month, 9 o'clock. This is our 2019 dates, deadlines, technical review, and meeting date. Pretty straightforward if that's the option you want to go. Second page, though, in blue is thinking a little bit different. And the whole goal here is to get you guys more timely financial information. One of the problems we have with meeting on the first Wednesday is the bank statements show up, I think, yesterday or Monday. So we don't get the October bank statements until right before the meeting, so we can't get them out to you guys. We got to reconcile those. The bookkeeper has to do the report. So that's why you guys are a month to 45 days behind, or at least 40 days behind looking at your financials, because of our Wednesday meeting. What the second proposal does is move you guys to the fourth Wednesday instead of the first. We could move it, consider it forward or back, however you want to do it. If we did it in January, we'd be moving it to the fourth Wednesday. You guys then could see current financials at the meeting that you meet. The second proposal, we played around with some stuff, maybe 10 verse 9, all that's whatever y'all want, 9, 10. It has been mentioned technical review would be better if we could do it later in the day. If you guys like it at 9, we'll do it at 9, that's fine. The problem we're having is, as you guys know, just a tight window, 8:30 to 9 to get everything rolling. But if you want it at 9, we'll do it at 9. And we don't require those guys to be there any longer, so it's really what you guys want. Just want to know what you think about this fourth Wednesday versus first. It's not a big change. It's still the Wednesday. But if we did that, for example, we started this in January, and your first meeting was January 23rd.
We're gonna go 2 months without a meeting, basically.
Well, you'd meet the 1st of December, and then you wouldn't meet to the end of January. We could set the first one for December if you wanted, and have 2 in there. January and December is kind of slow anyhow. The advantage there is, then is 1st of January, we get the bank statements, we get them to the accountant, they get the finance report, it goes out in your packet on a timely basis. And in the January meeting, you'd be looking at December numbers.
Have you talked to your bank? The banks have changed where they make statements all the
We
time.
get them the day we get the email when they come out. They produce our bank statement on the 1st of the month at Farmers. 1st of the month, today's the 7th, you got to get the bank statements, you got to reconcile it, we got to get it to the accountant, and then our packets go out a week ahead of time. So our packets went out on 31st. Got the bank statement the day after we mail your packets out.
Has the bank been contacted whether or not they'll change their cycle?
Yes, we've talked to them, but I mean, it's, in generally what we're doing is, the way they do that is, we could make a bank statement, but the issue is we want it to end at the end of the month. For our QuickBooks and what our accountant says, we want the bank statement to run through the 31st. We don't want to cut it off on the 24th and have you all looking at financials that go mid-month. We want to see a full month. We get the bank statement the day after the month closes. It's the reconcile, printing the report, fixing all the kind of issues, and then getting it to you guys. If you guys are fine with seeing bank statements that far back, but again, this is a good month. You looked at the bank balance of 80-some thousand, there's almost 20-some thousand more dollars in there. And you're not seeing timely bills.
You have to have 2-week window between getting it and then.
It takes about a week. Takes about a week. Problem is your packets go out. So we just thought about moving it back to the 4th. We can move it to the 2nd or 3rd Wednesday. It doesn't matter. I just kept it at Wednesdays. It's just an idea. The 4th Wednesday versus 1st or 2nd, it just makes no difference. It's up to you guys. Leave it exactly the same, or we can move it to the 4th, keep it at 9 o'clock, keep technical review at 9. It's whatever y'all want.
We did twice a month meetings, wasn't that on the 1st and 3rd Wednesday?
I think that's what historically it was.
When we did 2.
3rd Wednesdays.
We had a lot of business.
Yeah.
3rd Wednesday would be interesting to me, except we have Board of Adjustments that week on Thursday, which is not a problem for us, but if it can be whatever Wednesday. This was just an idea. If we moved it back, it would flow well with the finance statement. Technical review would move back 1 week, which gets us off the same day as historic board, which I'm having to attend more and more now too.
So I really don't care. I like keeping it on Wednesday. I like keeping it at 9 o'clock.
So me too,
I got the rest of the day I've got to do stuff.
Yeah, 'cause we don't start to 10, we shut the whole day off.
That's fine. I agree. Just what.
So you can pick what Wednesday, I think.
What if you had technical review the first Wednesday and the meeting the second Wednesday?
I think that works. I think we're gonna get the packets out. It still only gives us a day or two to get the finance report done, but we could shoot for that. Again, we get the finance report the 1st of the month. If you're the 2nd Wednesday, we're gonna be doing the finance report in about a 3-day window.
As long as
It's a
he
little
keeps
tricky.
it at Wednesday at 9 o'clock, do we really care what Wednesday of the month it is? So if you meet your financial statement goal, put it on whatever Wednesday. you want.
I just think it'd be better for you guys, now that we have an outside bookkeeper, I would feel more comfortable that you guys are looking at closer. That's just the only thing that's a little bit of a pet peeve.
Second, it moves it closer to your actual financial numbers. When you're waiting a month to see them, they're older.
Yeah, I just want you to see current bank balances and current bills. Third or fourth, I'm fine with the third, if you want to do the third, we can make it work.
I don't know that we care which first, second, third, fourth.
I just picked January to kick this off, because it's slow in January.
Wednesday at 9 o'clock for both of them.
That's fine.
Technical review and.
That's
Just
fine.
on different, yeah.
Well, then that would be the second schedule that you have. The only difference would be we'd make both those 9 o'clock. Those dates would be the dates, starting on the 23rd. There's the deadlines to file. Those would be your 12 meeting dates. And again, I don't want to make this worse, but way on down the hill, you see one of those falls on Christmas.
You know,
We
you
would-
know
we
your
wouldn't-
local governments meet on the second and fourth.
We've checked that already, yeah. This room's available to us on Wednesdays. We'd have to change
I'm
those
just
end of the
thinking
year.
you're gonna be a little busier on the fourth week, because you've got city commission, fiscal court, and planning and zoning.
Yeah. Which depending how the
So that's
first.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Depending how the first falls, some weeks I have that because the first Thursday, falls on the Thursday, so I get all those some months the other. So it's whatever you guys prefer. We want to make you all happy.
As long as it's Wednesday at 9 o'clock, you tell us what you
Okay,
like.
so we'll do the second schedule, 9 a.m., fourth Wednesday. Technical review stays at 9 a.m. And we'll deal with those end of the year dates, Thanksgiving, Christmas as they come,
Deal with those as needed.
later on.
So you're gonna have a planning meeting at 10 or 9?
Nine.
They're both gonna be at 9.
We'll make that 9 o'clock, we'll make technical review 9 o'clock. We'll go to the fourth Wednesday, starting in
It's gonna be
January.
9.
So we'll have a little bit of gap between our December meeting and January, but it's slow over the holidays anyhow and the weather, so I think we'll be all right. If something comes up, we'll have a special call in January if we have to.
Motion.
I make a motion, we schedule change to the second proposed meeting schedule with the start times being at 9 o'clock in the morning for both the planning commission and the technical review meeting.
Motion's been made.
Second.
David seconds. Question, discussion? All in favor? Vote unanimous. Thank you. Any other announcements are good for the order? Motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Appreciate it.